violation, eating forbidden fruit. But when the Moses law was added, it means that you've got 614 commandments that now if you violated any of them, another thing was added to the size of that sin that originally was just the one individual act of eating forbidden fruit. But now it is added 614 commandments of the law that if you violate one, you've committed a sin in that category of any of the 614. That the rabbis counted 613 commandments and they forgot one: honor your father and your mother. So my professor, who worked a lot on the NIV translation, his name was Professor Marvin Wilson. He did a lot of translation work for the book of Jonah and the book of Ruth in the NIV. He told us that the rabbis counted 613 commandments in the law. And he told us that they forgot one: honor your father and your mother. But nonetheless, in Romans 5:20, the law was added so that the trespass, the whole issue of the original sin, would be compounded by all the other acts of sin collectively under the heading of this one original sin. Again, Romans 5:20, the law was added so that the trespass might increase. But where the sin increased, the Greek says, the grace increased all the more. In fact, the Greek word there can be translated superabounded. It's the same as the word for the overflow used in the NIV of Romans 5:15, where it speaks about the grace overflows to the many nations. But in Romans 5:20, it's one of these compound words that means that you intensify the word for overflow. In other words, overflow beyond what it normally would be just an overflow. Well, this is an overflow beyond. It could be translated to superabound. So when the NIV says in Romans 5:20 that the grace would increase, it means that the grace would tremendously increase. It would be beyond overflow. And again in Romans 5:20, the law was added so that the trespass might increase. But where the sin increased, the grace way more increased. So the issue of bad news, somebody sinned before we were born, and we were born into the world with an account that already had a guilt record on our account, as in Psalm 51 verse 5, I was born into the world a sinner, not because of nature, but because of representation before I was born in the person of Adam, my ancestor. When he sinned, I was given credit for sinning. Well, that's not good news. But God has come to us with good news in Romans 5. And he's saying in Romans 5:20 that the law was added so that the trespass would increase. But where the sin increased, the grace way increased beyond overflow. In other words, what God has done to give humanity good news is so much greater than the bad news of having a negative representative before you were born. Now you have a righteous representative before you were born. And you need to learn about him, which Paul is testifying is the very saving character of Jesus Christ. And so, again, Romans 5:20, the law was added to increase the trespass, but where the sin increased, the grace overflowed beyond measure. The grace way canceled the guilt of sin. It established a right relationship with God through the person of Jesus. So again, where the sin increased, the grace way overflowed. Verse 21, Romans 5:21. So that just as the sin reigned in the death, in the Greek, Romans 5:21, just as the sin reigned like a person that sits on a throne as a king, just as the sin reigned in the death. The sin reigned in the death realm. So also the grace, according to the purpose of God, might reign. In other words, God's purpose is going to be fulfilled. As Job said to God, his purpose can't be thwarted. Like Job 42 verse 2, when Job said to God, Lord, I've come to understand your purpose can't be thwarted. Well, this purpose of God in Romans 5:21 is going to be fulfilled. And hear it again. Just as the sin reigned like a king in the death realm, so also the grace, according to the purpose of God, reigns through righteousness. Whose righteousness is that in context of Romans 5? The righteousness of the righteous servant that Paul's been speaking of in Romans 5. The same righteous servant Isaiah prophesied, Paul is saying in Romans 5, he's Jesus. He is the righteous one, just like Jeremiah gave prophecy on this point. Remember Jeremiah 23, 5 and 6? Yeah. In fact, I'm just going to throw this up here real quick, seeing which marker I can use.
Bob, who else is righteous? Kayla?
Absolutely. Because Jesus represents Kayla.
Show Kayla in the video.
Kayla, come on. Just for 1 second. Come on, just for a second. Come to Daddy just for a second.
Never mind.
She might come up later. Jeremiah 23, 5 and 6, as well as Jeremiah 33, 15 and 16, are additional prophecies. I'm talking about adding to the Isaiah prophecy, which you recall I've been emphasizing a great deal tonight. Isaiah 53, verse 11. Remember that prophecy in Isaiah 53, 11? The righteous servant of God would forgive the many nations because he would bear their problem of sin on their behalf. Well, Jeremiah also spoke of some prophecy that illuminates Romans 5:21. We had an accident. Our daughter just fell off of the chair. I'm glad she's okay.
Trying to get away
Yeah,
from Mama.
I'm trying to run from Mama. And she's laughing now. The daughter's laughing. So in Romans 5:21, there is so much prophecy that is being fulfilled in Paul's statement of what Jesus accomplished. Not only is the Isaiah 53:11 fulfilled that we've been emphasizing, but also Jeremiah 23, 5 and 6, because that says that the Lord is our righteousness. And Jesus is the Lord that became man for the sake of fulfilling all 614 of the commandments, not eating forbidden fruit, being guiltless, being the saint on behalf of everybody. So, Jeremiah 23, 5 and 6, the Lord's our righteousness. Repeated in Jeremiah 33, 15 and 16, the Lord is our righteousness is mentioned again. Well, Romans 5:21 mentions Jesus our righteousness in context. When it says that the grace reigns through righteousness, he doesn't have to mention Jesus' name next to righteousness because he's mentioned Jesus' name every verse in terms of the whole passage. He's been repeating Jesus versus Adam, Jesus versus Adam, Jesus versus Adam. The whole time he's been repeating the emphasis is on Jesus. So in context, we know in Romans 5:21 that it speaks of righteousness, which is his righteousness. In fulfillment of Jeremiah's prophecies, the Lord is our righteousness. But nonetheless, in Romans 5:21, to repeat, just as the result of the sin is that the sin sits on a throne like a ruler and reigns in the death realm, so also the purpose of God is that the grace reigns on a throne. Which grace is spoken of to me in Hebrews 4:16, because that speaks about, now here's our daughter if she gets in the picture. Baby?
Yay! Now that is photogenic. She is a photogenic one.
He-
There's a little beauty.
Yeah, a little beauty.
How old is she, Bob?
She's 19 months.
She's ready to do the well chase.
There's our beauty.
Hebrews 4:16 says that we approach the throne of grace, okay, to receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need, right? Well, who is seated on the throne? Jesus is. And it's the throne of grace, the same way as in Romans 5:21, the grace is pictured as ruling on a throne. So Jesus is the personification of God's grace. And his rule is through his righteousness. In other words, he judges people on the basis of his righteousness. So in Romans 5:21, just as the result of the rule as king regarding the personality referred to as the sin reigned in the death realm, so also the grace. I'm alluding now to Jesus sitting on the throne of grace, as in Hebrews 4:16. But in comparison to Romans 5:21, it's the same grace spoken of in the Greek as the grace.